Before you go, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching this story from? Drop your city or country in the comments below so we can see how far our little diner tale has traveled. Your words mean more than you know. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. A brand new story just as heartwarming is coming tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, stay kind, stay curious, and never stop believing in the magic of ordinary moments. It was supposed to be just another quiet morning. Jake Miller, a 35-year-old mechanic with calloused hands and tired eyes, pushed open the door of Maplewood Diner, a cozy little place, nestled in a town where everyone knew your name and coffee was always fresh. The bell above the door gave its usual cheerful jingle, a familiar sound that somehow made the world feel a little softer. At his side, his 6-year-old daughter Lily clutched her sketchbook tightly, her small boots tapping softly against the linoleum floor as she skipped toward their usual booth by the window. The morning sun filtered through the glass, casting golden patterns across the checkered floor and worn-down leather seats. It was their spot, the one they claimed every Saturday, morning without fail. "Good morning, Jake," called out Martha, the silver-haired waitress behind the counter. She poured coffee without even asking, setting it down with a smile that had seen more sunrises than stories. "Morning," Jake replied with a nod, shrugging off his flannel jacket as Lily climbed into the booth, already flipping open her sketchpad. He watched her for a moment, her little fingers moving with focus, drawing what looked like flowers and stick figures, all with bright eyes and big smiles. Jake loved that about her. Despite everything, Lily always found something beautiful to draw. "Pancakes and apple juice?" Martha asked with a wink. "You got it," Jake said. The diner buzzed with the low hum of conversation, silverware clinking, the occasional sizzle from the kitchen. It was the kind of place where time slowed down, and for Jake that was a blessing. Life outside those four walls was fast, loud and often overwhelming. Between bills, double shifts at the shop, and the silence that came late at night when Lily had gone to bed, this diner was their little sanctuary. But that morning, something shifted. Just as Martha brought their plates, the door chimed again. A woman stepped in, tall, graceful, maybe in her early 30s, with a long navy coat and sunglasses perched on top of her head. She didn't look like she was from around here. Something about the way she walked, confident but cautious, made her stand out. She scanned the room like she was searching for something, then quietly took a seat at the booth in the far corner, alone. Jake barely noticed her. But Lily did. He didn't see the moment she looked up from her drawing and spotted the woman. Didn't notice the way her eyes widened or how her pencil stilled in mid-air. It wasn't until she slid out of the booth, sketchbook in hand, and started walking quietly, purposefully toward the stranger, that Jake realized something was happening. "Lily," he called, startled. "Where are you going, sweetheart?" But she didn't answer. She just kept walking. Jake stood quickly, heart suddenly pounding. Then, with the whole diner watching, Lily stopped at the woman's table, looked up with innocent certainty, and said the words that would change everything. "Are you my mommy?" For a split second, time froze. Claire Bennett, 30 years old, sharp, composed, a woman who built her life on boardroom decisions and clean lines, stared down at the little girl now standing beside her booth. Her heart thudded hard in her chest, louder than the coffee shop buzz or the rain still dripping from her coat sleeves. "Are you my mummy?" the child had asked, her voice soft but unwavering, like she already knew the answer. Claire blinked. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or run. Jake rushed over, breath caught, face pale. "I'm so sorry," he said quickly, crouching beside his daughter. She's got an imagination. Sometimes she says things that—" But Claire shook her head. "It's okay," she interrupted, her voice calm, though her insides were anything but. Her eyes stayed locked on the girl. Lily, Jake had called her. She had a mass of wavy brown hair, hazel eyes too wise for her age, and an expression that was familiar, hauntingly familiar. Claire hadn't come to Maplewood for anything special. It was just a stop, a detour, a place to grab a coffee before heading back to the city and its 60-hour work weeks. But now she wasn't sure where she was supposed to go. She watched as Jake gently guided Lily back to their booth. The little girl went without protest, but she kept sneaking glances over her shoulder. At Claire, the waitress Martha approached with quiet curiosity. "Everything all right, hon?" Claire nodded, but her voice caught. "Yes, just a bit of a surprise." She sat in silence after that, staring into her coffee like it might offer answers. But all she saw was the child's face, that voice, that question. It hit a nerve she thought had long gone numb. Years ago, Claire had made a choice, or rather, had one made for her. Her younger sister, Rachel, had run away, pregnant, alone, scared, and never came back. Claire hadn't heard from her since. Her parents swept it under the rug, whispered about shame and moving on. Claire buried the pain, turned it into ambition, turned herself into someone who never looked back. But now, Lily had Rachel's eyes. Claire didn't believe in fate. She believed in logic, timing, and preparation. But this didn't feel like coincidence. She looked up, catching Jake's eyes for the first time. He was watching her too, guarded, unsure. There was a weight in the air now, something neither of them had expected, and neither of them knew what to do with. Claire stood up slowly, her coat brushing against the booth's edge. She pulled a few bills from her wallet and left them on the table, untouched coffee still steaming behind her. But as she walked past Jake and Lily's booth toward the exit, she hesitated. Lily looked up again, eyes bright, hopeful, searching. Claire offered her a small, uncertain smile, and Lily smiled back. Just like that, something unspoken passed between them, something that felt like the beginning of a storm they weren't ready for. But maybe, just maybe, it was a storm worth walking through. The next morning, Jake couldn't shake the feeling. He stood at the kitchen sink, staring blankly out the window, as Lily hummed to herself at the table behind him, coloring a new drawing. Outside, the sky was overcast, thick with the kind of clouds that always hinted at change. The image of Claire, her expression, the way she looked at Lily, kept replaying in his mind. It hadn't just been surprise. It was something deeper. Recognition. Jake dried his hands on a towel and reached for his phone. He'd never dug too far into Lily's adoption. It had been clean, legal, through the county. Rachel, her birth mother, had been listed with minimal information, no known relatives, no details about the father. Jake had always figured the past didn't matter, not when he was busy being the present, but now, after yesterday, he wasn't so sure. He called someone he hadn't spoken to in a long time, Tom Harris, a retired detective who used to fix up old cars with Jake on the weekends. The man had contacts. He knew how to find things people didn't want found. "You mind meeting me at the diner?" Jake asked. "You buying the coffee?" Harris replied. Jake chuckled. "You know it." By late morning, they were seated in the far corner of Maplewood Diner. Lily sat at the next booth over, sketching intently with a crayon clutched in her hand. She barely looked up, lost in her world of flowers and imagined families. Jake explained. Everything. The adoption, the gaps, the strange feeling in his gut since yesterday. He kept his voice low, careful. Harris listened like he always did, quiet, steady, no judgment. "I know this sounds crazy," Jake said, glancing at Lily, "but that woman, Claire, there's something there. Lily saw it. I saw it. Sometimes," Harris said slowly, "kids see things before we do." He tapped his fingers on the table, thoughtful. "If Rachel Bennett really is the birth mom and Claire's her sister, then that makes her—" He paused. "Lily's aunt." Jake nodded, barely breathing. "I need to know if it's true." Harris pulled out a notebook, scribbling a few things down. "I've got a friend in records. Might take a couple days, but I'll see what I can find. If Claire Bennett's name is anywhere near those files, we'll know." Jake exhaled, a mix of relief and anxiety washing over him. Just then the door chimed. He turned. Claire. She stepped into the diner like she wasn't sure she should be there. Her coat clung to her in the damp morning air. Their eyes met, and for a second, everything else fell away. Lily looked up from her drawing, her face lit up. "She came back," she whispered to herself. Claire approached their booth slowly, cautiously. "Hi," she said softly, her eyes flicking between Jake and Lily. "I'm not sure why I'm here. I just couldn't stop thinking about her." Jake stood, heart pounding. Then maybe, he said, voice low, it's time we all start asking the hard questions, and just like that the past began to crack open. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Claire kept returning to Maplewood Diner, not every day, but often enough that it became a quiet routine. She'd sit at the same corner booth, order the same black coffee she never quite finished, and watch Jake and Lily from a respectful distance. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't, but the space between them was growing smaller slowly. Jake didn't push. He didn't know what Claire was carrying, but it was heavy. You could see it in the way her shoulders stayed tight, even when she smiled. In the way she looked at Lily like she was something beautiful she wasn't sure she was allowed to love. But Lily didn't hesitate. She'd bring Claire drawings, pictures of houses with big trees, families holding hands, stars that looked more like suns. Claire would trace each one with her fingertips, like they were relics, not scribbles. And one morning Lily climbed right into the booth beside her and leaned against her arm, completely uninvited, completely at home. Claire didn't move. She just let her. That moment changed something. Later that afternoon, Jake got a call. "Jake, it's Harris," the old detective said. "I found something." Jake stepped outside, heart in his throat. "Talk to me." The adoption records were sealed, tight, but I found a back channel through the hospital files. Rachel Bennett is listed as Lily's mother. Claire Bennett is her next of kin, noted on an emergency contact form that was never updated. There's no father listed, no other family, just Claire. Jake didn't say anything for a long moment. "I knew it," he said quietly. "I felt it." Harris's voice softened. "She deserves to know, Jake. Both of them do." That night, Jake barely slept. He kept thinking about what this would mean for Lily, for Claire, and for himself. They had built something small but safe. Was opening this door going to tear it apart? The next morning, the diner was nearly empty when Claire walked in. She looked different, less guarded. Her hair was pulled back, and her usual high heels had been traded for flats. She looked real. Jake stood as she approached. "There's something you should know," he said, his voice steady. She sat, nodding. "Me too." He told her everything. About Harris, about the file, about Rachel. Claire didn't cry. Not at first. She just stared at the table, lips trembling, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles went white. "She was my baby sister," she whispered, "and no one ever told me what happened to her. My parents, God, they lied. They said she didn't want the baby, that she disappeared by choice." Jake reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "She didn't disappear," he said softly. "She gave the world Lily. And somehow, Lily found you anyway." Claire finally looked up, tears in her eyes. "I don't know how to be anything." To her, she admitted. "I'm not mother material." Jake smiled gently. "Then be whatever comes next." And in that quiet booth, something fragile and new began to take root. Spring came early that year. The trees lining Maplewood's main street bloomed in soft pinks and whites, and the air carried that fresh, clean scent that only comes after the storm has passed. Jake stood outside his apartment, arms crossed, as he watched Lily run ahead down the walkway, her sketchpad tucked under one arm. She was bouncing, literally, with excitement. Up ahead, Claire leaned against her sleek black SUV, sunglasses pushed onto her head, hands tucked in the pockets of her light coat. It still didn't feel real, the way she kept showing up. At first it was once a week, then twice, then weekends. And now, she was here almost every day. Lily ran straight to her, holding out a folded piece of paper like it was treasure. "I made this for you," she beamed. Claire knelt down to open it. The drawing was familiar. 3 figures, Jake, Lily, and Claire, standing in front of a cozy house beneath a giant oak tree. This time, scribbled in big letters across the top, were the words, "Our home." Claire didn't speak. She just blinked, lips parting, throat tightening. She'd been called a lot of things in her life, CEO, boss, heiress, but never this. Jake walked up slowly, catching the edge of the drawing over her shoulder. "She's got a vision," he said with a soft laugh. Claire looked up at him. "She's got more courage than most adults I know." They were headed to The lake house, Claire's lake house to be exact. 3,500 square feet of quiet, untouched space, tucked away 40 miles from town. She hadn't been there in over a decade. Not since before Rachel. Not since life had turned into boardrooms and stock reports and silence. But something had shifted. Claire had stopped running. They drove with the windows down. Lily's laughter, filling the car as she counted every cow they passed. When they pulled up to the house, it looked just as Claire remembered. Tall windows, stone walls, a long porch that overlooked the water. Dusty, weathered, but still standing, like her. Lily ran through the rooms with wide eyes, her voice echoing in the empty halls. "Can we live here?" she asked without hesitation. Claire smiled, but her voice wavered. "Would you want to?" "Yes," Lily said instantly. "If you're here too." Jake stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching it all unfold. That night they sat on the back deck, Claire on one side of Lily, Jake on the other. The sun dipped low over the lake, casting gold across the water. No one said much. They didn't have to. Lily leaned against Claire's shoulder, her tiny fingers wrapping around hers. And just like that, without permission or warning, Claire let go of fear, of guilt, of the life she thought she had to live. She squeezed Lily's hand back, and for the first time in years the world felt quiet, still, whole. Jake looked at her, eyes steady. "Sometimes," he said, "the best families are the ones we don't see coming." Claire nodded slowly. "And sometimes they're exactly the ones we need. This story may have been fictional, but the emotions it stirred, those were real. If this journey touched your heart in any way, whether it reminded you of someone, made you think about second chances, or simply brought a tear to your eye, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments what part of the story stayed with you the most. Was it Lily's innocence, Jake's quiet strength, or Claire's transformation from guarded to open-hearted? And where in the world are you watching from? It always amazes me how stories like this can connect people across miles, time zones, and experiences. Whether you're in a big city or a small town like Maplewood, your thoughts matter here. Your voice, your feelings, they bring life to these stories long after the credits roll. So scroll down, take a moment, and share something with us. Because sometimes your comment could be the spark of the next story we tell. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. A brand new story, just as heartfelt, is coming tomorrow. You won't want to miss it. Until then, keep believing in the quiet power of connection.